So if you're just hearing me now, welcome, and this is Sherry Andrea, and I'm glad that you could join me. And today is Tuesday. I think it's the 28th, and I hope you've had a good week so far. I know it's only Tuesday, but I still hope you've had a good week so far. I hope that your weather has been good, because some have really good weather and some are having not so good weather. Some are having in-between weather. So I hope that your week so far has at least been nice to you. Hope everybody's getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, doing the best you can to eat well. That's really important, especially with what's going on with food lately. Even if you don't do fast food and you only do, you do your own shopping from grocery store, produce market, it's getting more and more difficult to find food that's of a high enough vibration. And I'm actually hoping one day soon to actually do a show where we actually discuss that. But for now, I'll just leave it at, I hope you're eating well. For some of you, I know that you participated in Lent, and which means that you decided to give up something for Lent. I every now and then go to the CNN news website, and this a couple of days ago, I went to the website, and right on the front page, there was a brewery owner who owns, I guess it's like a brewery and also a bar. And he gave up everything except beer and water for Lent. And I got kind of a little giggle out of it because I was like, I'm like, this is kind of, you could say, like setting a bad example. He made it clear he wasn't giving up on the beer. So he, for Lent, he gave up everything else, but he kept the beer and the water. Well, I hope you made a good choice for Lent. And it's very easy to tell if you made a good choice. If you gave up something that you really like, that it was difficult for you to give up, then generally you usually made a good choice. If you gave up something that was really easy for you to give up, like if you gave up chewing gum, or if you, gave up wearing a certain color, maybe it's your favorite color, but you gave up wearing a certain color, you really have to ask yourself if what you were trying to prove, what type of sacrifice you were trying to make, and were you really trying to make what to you would be a sacrifice, and was it really? So, for Lent, if you're going to participate, make sure that, for one, do a little research and understand what, a true sacrifice is. Sacrifice is a sacrifice of the lesser self. It's those things that the lesser self wants. It's those things that maybe the lesser self isn't letting go of. So maybe if you're still, every night you're having that one glass of wine and you really, really, really super look forward to it and it's like something that you never miss, well, maybe that's what you might want to give up. Or maybe if, you have some other habit, like maybe smoking, maybe even if you can't quit, maybe you'll at least make the sacrifice of saying, well, I normally smoke a pack a day, but for Lent, I'm going to only smoke 10 cigarettes a day. I'm going to limit myself. I mean, even though you didn't go the whole way, there's something to be said about making that kind of an effort when we know how hard something like that is. So, anyway, what I want to talk tonight about is speaking of working on the self. I wanted to get a little bit deeper into it. We've talked before about how important working on, the self is, doing that self-work. but we haven't really discussed in depth some things that might help you. First of all, some of the things we might be talking about is, let's say, for example, working on past issues. It may be something that happened in your past, and it may be something as simple as an incident that happened to you one time. I can give you an example. You're going to laugh, but this is actually something that most of my life had bothered me. And when I tell you, you're going to be like, you've got to be kidding me. When I was little, I would say 7, 8 years old. Now, I was always afraid of bugs, and especially spiders. And growing up in New York, I remember when I was little, there was lots of daddy long legs around. Now, of course, I haven't seen daddy long legs in ages, but I remember we would see them quite often. And I remember I was outside, and my father and my brother were outside as well, and I don't remember what we were doing. Usually when my father was outside, he was doing yard work or something. But we were all outside, and we were all in the front yard. And I remember my brother was there, and I remember at one point they were laughing, and I didn't know what they were laughing at. And then my father comes towards me with his hand in his fist, holding it out, I have something for you. And, at first, of course, I didn't move, and I was kind of like, well, what do you have? And then he was like, it's a spider, it's a daddy long legs. And, of course, that's all you have to say to me is, either point at me, with that look on your face, there's a bug on you, or, just say spider. And off I would go running, screaming my head off. So as I turned to run, of course, he pretended as though he threw it on me. And I literally, I thought that it was real. I thought that there was a spider, and I thought he had thrown it on me. So then, if you can imagine, I proceed to scream and yell and spin in circles all around the yard because I think there's a spider on me, while my father and my brother just laughed hysterically. Well, needless to say, I, of course, didn't think it was funny. But, the really weird thing is, when I grew up, I realized that I was actually really kind of still pissed off about that. And I'm not embarrassed saying I probably stayed pissed off about that incident for probably a good 20 years until I finally was able to let it go. And now when I talk about it, now it doesn't elicit any negative feelings. Now it's actually something that, as I'm telling the story, I can barely hold myself back from laughing about it. But there are things that happen in your past, and they may be small little things like that, where if you told someone, they'd probably give you that look like, you've got to be kidding, that's what's bothering you. And sometimes they're really, really huge things. There are things that, happen to you, maybe abuse, maybe a traumatic accident, maybe the death of somebody close to you at a crucial time in your life. So many things, both, small, big, and in between, happen to us, even, during our early years. So many things happen and are shaping us and are leaving that kind of a permanent impression, almost permanent mark on us that we actually end up holding on to for a long time. And a perfect example of that is such a silly thing that I experienced that really was funny, where no one meant any harm. I held on to it for probably more than 20 years. I was mad about it. And for more than 20 years, I couldn't see the other side of it. I couldn't see it from the perspective of my father and my brother, where it was just the three of us, outside having a good time, and it was meant to be funny. It wasn't meant to be harmful or anything. Of course, I wouldn't recommend doing that to anyone who's afraid of bugs. But like I said, we all have these issues, both, big and small and in between. And these are the things that we have to eventually deal with. We eventually have to resolve them, be able to see them for the truth of what they are, and then to be able to finally one day release them. One day release ourselves from those issues. And this is not an easy thing to do, even with something as small as my spider incident, because, I just told that story of what happened to me, and although I'm sure, it may have given you a really good giggle, you may be sitting there thinking, well, that nowhere near compares to what happened to me. What happened to me is huge compared to what you just said, to your experience. And so you may be thinking, with how huge my experience is that I'm trying to, resolve from my past and get over and be able to move on from, how am I going to deal with such a huge issue? A small one, you may be looking at it like, a small one like you just told, that would be easy for me to get over. But then you have the much larger issues to get over. And it is possible. Just don't set yourself up thinking that you're going to be able to work on it and resolve it quickly. Because these things do take time. No, it didn't take time for those issues to be like cemented into place in our minds. But it surely does take time for us to resolve them and let go of them. And one of the first things that I would definitely say is that if you're in it for the long haul and you're not just trying to work on, say, just one issue, that one issue that may be really affecting you in your life, but you're not only looking to deal with just one particular issue, but you're looking to, deal with all the issues that you have, no matter what they are, and maybe you're consciously working on ascension, and so that's your reason for doing it. I would definitely say one of the first things that you want to do is, go ahead and ask for help from your higher self, from the angels, the ascended masters. Just go ahead, ask for help. Ask for the things that you need to work on and resolve to be brought to the surface. Now, I can tell you from experience that doing that works very well. I remember when one day I was sitting and I was thinking, how am I going to, do the self-work? I don't know what to work on. There were certain things that I knew, certain incidences, like the spider incidents that happened that I knew I needed to work on. But, and then certain incidences where, maybe certain times in my life, people that had been important to me had said, something that really affected me, maybe because I had so much love for them and so much respect for them, and I put them up on a pedestal. And so then when they said something negative to me, it really crushed me. Now, those things, in the spider, those were more obvious things that I knew I needed to deal with. But as far as anything else, I was kind of like, well, how do I know what I need to deal with? That's where asking for help and asking for those things to be naturally brought to the surface really helps. Another thing I want to point out is, and I don't know, I may be telling you something that everyone knows, but just in case, I'll just say it. When you do chakra work, if you don't know, let me tell you, when you're working on the chakras and those chakras are trying to clear things, whatever is causing them to go out of balance, is blocking them, as though there are layers of things within them that need to be resolved from doing that chakra work, and from those chakras trying to clear, things will come to the surface. So I'll give you an example. Even now, if I do chakra work, whatever is left that I still need to do some work on, after I do chakra work, say I decide tomorrow say I decide tomorrow, oh, I'm gonna do a whole bunch of, I'm gonna do not a whole bunch of, but I'm gonna do some, some work on my upper chakras, and I know that for the next week or 2 weeks, as things are being brought to the surface to be cleared and released, some things may suddenly start coming to my mind. And what I mean by that is things that I haven't thought of in years, incidences that happened so long ago and that I haven't thought of in such a long time. Sometimes I'll say to myself, wow, I haven't thought of that in 20 years. But don't just ignore it. If that happens to you, that's something that's trying to come to the surface, that it's almost like saying, okay, it's time. You can go ahead and work on this and resolve this. If it's naturally just coming to the surface, or from you doing chakra work, it's coming to the surface, that means you're ready to work on that, and you need to go ahead and work on that. This self-work a lot of times isn't you choosing what you're going to work on. A lot of times it is you waiting to notice and realize what's coming to the surface, popping its head up and saying, okay, here I am, it's time, okay, do me next, work on me next. And you really have to be paying attention, so things that people sometimes overlook. If you just said to a friend, you know what I thought about today, or you know who I thought about today, and then you tell them an incident that came to your mind regarding maybe another person or just a situation, pay close attention to that. Because it may not just be a coincidence, it may be a little bit more than that. It may be something coming to the surface to say, hey, it's time. It's time. Let's work on this. So ask for help. Ask for things to be brought to the surface. And remember, do the chakra work. Don't let it go. Go ahead. You'll help yourself. Do the chakra work, and I would recommend doing at least some really good heavy-duty chakra work at least once every 6 weeks. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I'm trying to read my own handwriting. Sorry, hold on. Okay, there isn't really any one right way to do self-work. So this isn't really, I mean, you can search the internet and you can Google it, and yeah, you're going to find a lot of articles and things dealing with that self-work. If you want to, if you need help, I think one of the good ways to kind of realize what work you might need to do is go to a living master's website like Osho. You can Google him. Just read some of what's on his website about, different topics. And when you read them, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do, when you read it, it really does bring to mind things that you need to work on. As you're reading his words, I mean, one right after the other, you're like, oh, that's something I need to work on too. Oh, there's another thing, I need to work on that too. So it does help doing some reading, a little bit of reading every day, because that will help remind you, help kind of point out to you maybe some things that you need to work on. Definitely pay attention to your interactions with other people, things that throughout the day, if you notice that something bothers you, you might want to pay attention to that, because how long have you been bothered by something similar, a similar situation, a similar action, someone saying something similar? How long have you been having that issue and start asking yourself questions. Even though there's no one right way to do self-work, no specific way, and no way that anybody probably could really give you an instruction form, at least one, like I said, start with asking for help, asking for those things to be brought to the surface. Start with paying close attention to anything that comes up, anything you're still mad at. And here's the thing, you could always check yourself. If you want to check to see if you've properly worked on and resolved something, what you do is answer this question. When you think about it, and you think about that thing, that incident, that person, and you think about what happened, does it still elicit a strong negative emotional response? Now, if the answer is yes, you still get mad about it all over again like it just happened, okay, you got some more work to do on it. There's something you still haven't seen. And to give you an example, when some of the things that I was working on, and I would do that test, I'd do that little check, and I would think about it and go, oh, okay, it's still eliciting a strong emotional response. It's still like a strong emotional response as though it just happened. And so I would go, oh, okay, there's something I've seen and realized so much about this, about the people involved, but still, there must be something I still haven't seen. There must be some truth that I still have not uncovered. And so it is sort of like a going back to the drawing board. And literally, it's like, I don't know, it's almost like a cube that you pick up, like a Rubik's Cube. You know how many sides a Rubik's Cube has to it? It's like you've picked up something like that, and you're trying to work on all sides, and you're trying to make sure you don't miss really checking out every side really good. There's some truth to be seen from every side. Now, what I mean is, in an incident that happened, there's your perspective. Everyone else involved, there's their perspective. Now, there may be also others involved that you wouldn't think to consider. Like, for example, say at one point you talked to someone about what was going on, and maybe they either didn't side with you, or they just made the situation worse by giving a harsh opinion when you talk to them about it. Maybe they weren't so nice. So now you have them and their side to consider as well. Because, see, we're trying, when it comes to a situation, the hard thing is, many times there are so many players involved, so many different people's perspectives to look at it from. And, yeah, it's very difficult. I'm not going to tell you you're going to want to look at it from anybody else's perspective, especially if in the situation, you out of the situation, you were hurt. Of course, you're not going to, if you were the victim in the whole thing, you're not going to want to look at it from anybody else's perspective. That's going to be something that's going to be difficult for you. That's like me saying to you, oh, you were mugged at the ATM. Oh, he hit you upside the head and you were bleeding and maybe you fell unconscious and it was raining outside and you ended up getting the bad flu from it. You ended up in the hospital for a period of time. And here I am saying to you, see it from their perspective. Okay, you're probably thinking she must have that wrong. I know it sounds like I must have it wrong, because I'm actually asking you to look at it from the perspective of the person who, in your opinion, is the one in the wrong versus you who are the victim. But the reason why, there's so many different things to not only look at, but so many different truths to realize. For example, if you haven't as of yet, let's just say, for example, that last scenario I gave did happen. If you haven't as of yet realized a truth even close to the fact that we all choose to come here. We all choose to come here and into each lifetime to work on certain lessons. And that others that when we're on the other side, we know and we love, have chosen to play certain roles in our lives so we can learn those lessons. And that person that mugged you at the ATM on the other side, that is somebody that you know and love very much. He just agreed to play a role for you. He agreed to make that sacrifice for you, knowing that it might forever damage the relationship between the two of you, between like those two souls, so to speak. Now, see, if that's not your truth that you've realized, hey, I don't know. That may be the truth that you need to uncover, and that you need to end up eventually accepting as your truth when you come to that. That's going to make all the difference from you being able to literally move on from that thing that happened and really release it. So it's not easy saying, look at it from somebody else's perspective. Just like it's not easy when I tell someone, whatever is in your reality, you caused it. That's very hard to say to someone who's going through a hard time and where maybe they do feel like in their situation like they're the victim. I often, will joke with friends when we discuss this, and I'll laugh, and we'll both laugh because, nobody, most of the time, no one wants to hear that. And yes, I've joked with people and told them that is actually something I've actually been cursed out for. I've actually been told off for that. Trying to explain to someone which are basic principles of the law of attraction, it didn't come off too well to this person I was trying to explain it to. And what they got and what they heard was, so you mean to tell me I wanted this for myself? You mean to tell me that I must not like myself, and so I wanted myself to go through this, and I wanted myself to deal with this? And it did not go over well at all. And they really went off on me. And it's like I understand, because when you're in the middle of it and you're like really dealing with a hard situation, the last thing you want to hear from somebody is basically what sounds to you like them saying, well, it's your fault. But if it happened to you, if it was in your reality, there's a reason for it. It didn't just happen by accident. I'm not saying you asked for it, but there's a reason for it. Sometimes we don't know the reason for things, and things happen. That's what trust and faith is called. A lot of people will use the word trust and faith and actually have no idea what those two words mean. Trust and faith involves you not understanding or having a clue why something happened to you, why it had to happen to you, but having trust and faith that if it happened, there's a reason. There was something that you were supposed to see from it, some lesson you were supposed to get out of it, or maybe that experience. Maybe it was an experience that you needed to have because down the road when you've resolved that and you've released it, maybe somewhere down the road there is someone that went through the same thing that maybe you are meant to help. Maybe there is someone who at some point in the future is so going to need the help from a person who went through that same thing, and maybe it's going to be a life or death situation. Now, I know that you may think that sounds like a stretch, that I'm saying that something that may have happened 20 years ago was basically set up so that, 20 years later, you would be in the right position to try to help someone. But the thing is, there are things that happen and happen every day that we don't understand. But there's no coincidence. If it happened for a reason. It happened because it needed to happen, even if we don't understand why. You don't have to understand it for it to somehow have been necessary. Now, of course, some of us have it harder in this lifetime than others. Some of us are dealing with much harder and difficult things. So, but if you're one of those people who are dealing with some of the most difficult, things, some of the most difficult, issues and situations, just know that you're going to continue to work on it, no matter what you have to do to work on it. Whether you work on it yourself, whether you go and you seek professional help, whether you get a coach, somebody that can help you to slowly peel back the layers, because that's basically a lot of what self-work is. You're slowly peeling back the layers, and every time you peel back a layer, you see a little bit more. Now, often when I was working on something, I would realize something that seemed very huge to me. That light bulb would go on, and I would have Oprah Winfrey's aha moment. I'd realize something that I hadn't realized before, and something that changed everything. However, I knew I wasn't done yet. I was like, okay, this is great, and it's another piece to the puzzle, but I know this isn't the whole. I don't have all the pieces yet. And so I keep working. And I know that sometimes you want to hurry up and you want to get it done and over with, not because you're ambitious to ascend, to go through the ascension process, but because you are really anxious to get any pain that you're feeling that's associated with it over with. And it may be pain, but it may be guilt too, because sometimes things that we have in our past aren't necessarily things that were done to us, but things that we did to other people. I've done my fair share of stuff. And, guilt is the worst thing. Guilt for something that you've done. And, guilt is that thing that eventually, the longer it stays there, and it's allowed to stay there, and you're not released from it by either you releasing yourself from it or somebody else releasing you from it. The longer it's allowed to stay there, what ends up eventually happening is guilt causes disease. I know that sometimes because of what you did, you're like, no, but I can't let go of it. I can't just let go of it and forgive myself for it. I did something really bad. Sometimes people have guilt over the thought of letting go of their guilt. But the thing is, it's not serving you or the other person well. And no, you don't need to go search out this person. This isn't the 12-step program. The 12-step program requires that you go and apologize to people that you've wronged. There's a reason why. Because in doing that, the 12-step program has you doing certain things that are leading you to certain things. However, in this case, you don't have to do that. You don't have to go search out the person, make amends, and apologize to them for the things that you did. You probably won't be helping them either if you do that, because maybe just because you're holding on to it as guilt, that doesn't mean that they are. They may have forgotten all about it. What good does it do them if you bring it back to them? So you don't want to risk doing that. You don't want to risk, making something worse by trying to make something better. You don't need the other person standing in front of you to deal with the guilt you have. The only thing that you need is your own heart. The only thing that you need is to get to that point where you're really honestly sorry for what you did. Maybe you even understand why you did the thing you did at the time, what was going on with you at the time. And then, of course, as you're trying to work on these things, you have tools to use. working on things in meditation. What I mean is sitting down, getting ready to meditate with the specific intention in mind that you're going to work on this issue. You're going to work on at least just seeing some more truth in an issue. Or possibly using mantras or decrees or prayer, along with maybe the violet flame, while having the intention of allowing truth to come to the surface, new truths to be realized about this thing, about this situation. So, even if it's guilt that you're dealing with, you don't need the other person that you wronged in front of you so that you can apologize to them. You also don't need to feel like, well, I can't get rid of my guilt because I can't apologize to this person. No, you don't have to apologize to them face to face for you to release yourself of the guilt. Actually, you never should have had the guilt to begin with. It's our human selves, it's our lesser self that makes us feel like we need to do these things, like we need to hold on to guilt for something we did. But the reality is the moment it happened, we were forgiven for it. The only one that didn't forgive us was our own self. If you look around one day and you realize you're the only one that's still holding it against you, then don't you think it's time to let go? And I'm sure that, everyone has something that they could afford to let go of. You know what? You want to give something up for Lent? How about giving up guilt for Lent? Now, you want to talk about something that's really powerful to give up? Give that up. That is something worth giving up. That is something that the lesser self is doing that holds you back from becoming more of your higher self. So, think about giving that up. And basically, don't avoid situations. Don't get into the habit. I mean, if you went to a concert and something bad happened there and now you've got a fear of concerts, don't avoid situations. That's not the answer. Actually, sometimes you're dealing with situations by still going there, not avoiding anything. It gives you the chance to actually work that much more on yourself, because sometimes while you're there, you might start to feel maybe uncomfortable, and you can actually pay attention and question yourself. I'm feeling uncomfortable. Why am I feeling uncomfortable? Are there certain things even in the atmosphere that are making me feel uncomfortable? Is it a smell that I'm associating with something? And every time I can actually, attest to this, that, I'm sure a lot of you know, a smell is very powerful sometimes. Along with something that happened in your past, there's a smell that's associated with it. And every time you smell that smell, it brings that thing that happened or that incident. Or sometimes it's not a bad thing. Sometimes a smell reminds you of a person from your past. And these are all things you need to pay attention to. If they're coming up and you're noticing them, it's something you need to pay attention to. So, don't ignore anything that comes to the surface. And if it comes, at a time where you're like in the middle of something and you can't work on it right then, that's okay. That's just your chance to make that middle note, okay, that's something I still need to work on. Just don't, completely then sweep it under the carpet and forget about it. But, work on it. Often, a lot of the self-work that we have to do, we can do that with the people that we're in relationships with, whether it's the best friend or it's the boyfriend or the girlfriend. You know, I was just telling someone today that there are many people that think that they're in the relationship, for enjoyment purposes. But there's more to it than that. You're in a relationship because the two of you have, in getting together, it's like you've made a contract to help each other with your lessons for as long as you're together. So don't think that it's always supposed to be sunshine and roses. If you get into an argument, something goes wrong, you have a disagreement, don't think that, the relationship's on the rocks. No, it's not. That's your time to really start working. That's the benefit of having each other, is that you're going to help each other with your lessons, because here you have a person that loves you and will be compassionate and understanding and tolerant, and it will help you. So use the relationships that you already have to help you to work on yourself. Don't be afraid to ask that person, hey, there's something that I really need to work on, and I need you to help me with this. And then what that's going to cause is that other person to pay a little bit more attention to that area that you want to work on, and so that they can be there to be like, when something comes up, this is that area that you said you were working on, and I just noticed you said this or you did that. Let them help you. You don't always, self-work isn't always solitary. Sometimes a lot of the self-work is done by people that you have a relationship with, even though they don't know what you're doing. They don't know the self-work you're doing. Like my parents, for example, I think that they have been awesome with, helping me to get to where I am. If it wasn't for them at times being so, I don't have a nice word for what I was going to say. If it wasn't for them being what they agreed to be for me in this lifetime, okay, see, I cleaned that up. If it wasn't for them agreeing to be what they, are for me in this lifetime, if it wasn't for them playing that role for me, there's so many things that through them I was able to work on. There were so many things, and I didn't avoid it. Some people will avoid it. Some people, where there's tough relationships for whatever reason, even if it's just temporary, because maybe there's something going on and you don't all meet eye to eye, even if it's just temporary like that. The other person doesn't know, but that's why I always say, don't necessarily avoid those chances to be in their presence. I once had somebody say to me that they wanted to go home for the holidays, but then at the same time they weren't looking forward to it. And I understood why they weren't looking forward to it, but it depends. If you see it from a different perspective, that was a chance, an opportunity to test out all that work they'd been doing on themselves and to see how they did. You can see it sometimes as, the test or the final exam you're having to see if you are going to pass, fail, or if you're at least going to get a C. You know what I mean? So it just depends on the way you see it, the way you allow yourself to see it. Some people, honestly, they can honestly tell you, or you can honestly say, I'm not ready for that yet. I'm not quite ready. In the face of this, I'm just going to crumble. So I'm not ready for that test yet. And that's fine. Take your time. When it comes to self-work, you have to understand that there is no rush. It takes however long it takes. As long as you continue working on it, time is not the issue. The fact that you've even started, the fact that you even care to, that's a reason to pat yourself on the back. That's a reason to be really happy with yourself. Well, I think I've talked enough for a Tuesday. I want to let you know, I did say the last show that I would start to have guests on the show on a regular basis. I am working steadily to set those up. Maybe not this week, but I do have a guest coming up this Saturday, and that would be Michael and Sarah Feely. And they're actually two ex-police officers who are now, they've written a lot of really good books, so many different topics. So interviewing them is really going to be awesome. Metaphysical, their experiences that they had when they were still police officers of actually, I think I'm remembering this off the top of my head. If I'm recalling correctly, they were investigating a crime when they actually relived the crime itself. And so we'll be talking about some of the experiences they had. They've written on UFOs, extraterrestrials. They've written on so many different topics, as well as ascension awakening topics. So I think you'll really like them. And that show we're going to do Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, if you can, go ahead and mark your calendar now, or the show is already listed, so you can go ahead to the show, and if you click the follow button, then it'll remind you of the show coming up. But I've already started to schedule guests, and I'm coming across some just awesome people that have some awesome experiences and that can share a lot that I think that everybody can benefit from. So thank you for your patience while I get them scheduled and everything. And I appreciate your time tonight. And I hope that you come back and you listen on Thursday. In the meantime, if you'd like to read more about what I've discussed, I have so many post on my blog at sherryandrea.com. If you have a question about anything I discussed, feel free to email me at sherryandrea.com because I look forward to hearing from you. And if you're interested in a coaching session or even a trial session, feel free to email me as well. The coaching sessions are just $25 per session. Sessions go anywhere from an hour, 2 hours. Of course, if you really need a session, you don't have $25. I never turn anyone down. The need is more, your need and you getting help when you need it is more important than the money. So don't let that make you feel like you can't, call and ask for a session. So go ahead and call me. And thank you again, and I look forward to talking with you on Thursday. Bye.